In 1996, a murder occurred in the USA that stirred up the whole country. 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey was found dead in the basement of her parents' house. The tragedy occurred on Christmas night and left a huge number of questions that the investigation still cannot answer. One of the key roles in the whole story is played by the baby's parents, Jon and Patricia Ramsey, who during this time managed to be the main suspects in the commission of a crime and make a good profit on the death of their daughter. Some time ago, the results of a DNA test were made public, justifying them, but the point in the case has not yet been put. Christmas Eve on December 25, 1996 will long remain in the memory of residents of the town of Boulder, in the U.S. state of Colorado. Baby JonBenet Ramsey, the daughter of the wealthy owner of the computer company, Jon Ramsey, and his wife Patricia, went to celebrate Christmas to visit friends in the company of her parents. The celebration was fun. The kids were entertained by Santa Claus all evening. The happy little girl fell asleep in the car on the way home, and Dad, having reached home, took her to the nursery and put her to bed. The last time the girl was seen alive at 22:00, when her parents left her in their room for the night. What happened next is more like the plot of a detective novel with thriller elements. The best minds of the American police fought over the investigation of the case. Experts were involved: geneticists, psychologists, criminologists. Yes, there was even a special fake tombstone for the grave of the girl, where listening devices were embedded to collect additional information. However, this did not shed any light on the murder of the baby. Who took the life of a little beauty queen? The investigation has two versions. The first is that an killer entered the house. The second is that Ramsey's family members, including her mother, father, and older brother, who was 9 years old at the time, were involved in the crime. The second version was the main one for many years, but thanks to the latest DNA tests, suspicions were officially lifted from the family. While the investigation is looking for new leads, let's remember everything that is known about this case. While the investigation is looking for new leads, let's remember everything that is known about this case. On December 26, JonBenet's mother got up at 5 a.m. to prepare for a family trip to Lake Michigan. Going down the stairs, the woman saw a letter on the last step. The message said that her daughter JonBenet, who, as we remember, was supposed to sleep peacefully in her bed from 10 p.m., had been abducted, and it was necessary to pay $118,000 for her return. Patricia immediately woke up her husband, and they decided to call the police, although the letter stated that this should not be done in any case. The criminals also wrote in the message that they would call in the interval from 8:00 to 10:00 to tell how to transfer the money. The police arrived, and everyone, both the guards and family members, began to wait for the call. However, no one called. Then it was decided to inspect the house. When the girl's father, accompanied by his friend, went down to the basement, he saw his daughter's lifeless body wrapped in a blanket. Of course, the police acted incorrectly from the very beginning, which they later admitted. The house was not searched properly, and when it was decided to inspect it, for some reason, the father of the murdered baby Jon and a friend began to do it, and not the guards. As a result, some of the important evidence could have been lost, and the chances of solving the crime in hot pursuit decreased to 0. Upon learning about the suspicions in their address, a wealthy married couple immediately hired the best lawyers. On their advice, Jon and Patricia flatly refused to give written testimony, according to which the investigation hoped to get the opinion of psychologists. There is a technique that allows you to determine quite accurately what is false in the written testimony of witnesses and what is true. The further actions of the girl's mother and father were also suggestive. They refused to be interrogated and stated that in informal conversations, they had already given all the information to the investigators. There are a lot of oddities in this story, and most of them are related to the behavior of parents. For example, they reported that they undressed their daughter before going to bed and let her hair down. But JonBenet was found in a festive dress, with her hair gathered in two tails, on the back of her head and on top of her head, in which the leaves of the laurel wreath that the girl was wearing at the festival were stuck. It turns out that they lied. There is no answer. During the autopsy, undigested pieces of pineapple were found in the girl's stomach, which means that she ate about 4 hours before the murder. According to the parents, the last time the baby took food at the celebration around 20:00. Then where does the pineapple come from in the stomach? There is no answer. By the way, the police found this fruit in the family refrigerator. Some windows and the door were not locked at night in the house. Why didn't the parents lock the house? Perhaps they opened the locks after the tragedy happened to confuse the investigation. And shortly before the incident, Patricia and John handed out the keys to their home to a lot of people, friends, relatives, servants, ostensibly so that they would look after the house during the future vacation of the owners. Also a somewhat alarming fact. As for the note of the kidnappers, it was found out that it was prepared in advance using a typewriter. The device was searched everywhere they could, in the house, in the office, and in John Ramsey's garages, but they did not find it. The police have repeatedly been accused of being fixated on the guilt of parents and not developing other versions. Even within the group of investigators, there were disagreements. Some developed a version of the guilt of the family. Others insisted on the penetration of an outsider. The second claimed that the attacker entered the house through a basement window that had been broken long before. A smudge boot print on the window was also found. Its origin has not yet been established. None of the family members wore such shoes. JonBenet Ramsey was not buried in Boulder, but in Atlanta, Georgia, where her family used to live. Sometime after the murder, the Ramseys decided to move back to Atlanta. The girl's mother complained that she missed her baby. In this regard, the investigators decided to conduct an operation to collect additional information. It was assumed that the parents would go to their daughter's grave within a few days after arriving in Atlanta and perhaps would talk among themselves about the murder there. In their conversation, new details of the case could be revealed. A fake tombstone was ordered, completely repeating the real one, in which listening devices were mounted. The grave was monitored. However, what was the surprise of the police when the parents did not even think of going to their daughter's grave upon arrival in the city? They went shopping, furnished the house, solved current affairs, and did not even plan a visit to the cemetery. As a result, the idea failed. A boy who accidentally ran past the grave moved a fake tombstone, which his mother immediately informed the cemetery administration. The operation had to be curtailed with a scandal. For a long time, the case was opened and closed, and there was no clarity in it. The journalists made a huge fuss about him. There were dozens of articles about the murder and new details of the investigation, although many of them were simply false. The audience didn't know who to believe. The girl's parents appeared on a TV show, gave interviews, and even released a book called The Death of Innocence, in which they allegedly told everything they know about the murder of their daughter, and also put forward their versions of what happened. Steve Thomas, the investigator who handled the case, also published a book about him. But none of these publications brought the public one iota closer to solving the terrible crime, and could not do it. Finally, in 2008, the unheard of happened. Former teacher John Marquare confessed to killing JonBenet. The man was living in Thailand at the time, and he was extradited to the United States to confirm or deny guilt. Kerr claimed that he was in love with the girl, had an affair with her, and later drugged her and killed her by a ridiculous accident. After checking his testimony, it turned out that the man was lying. The reasons for self-incrimination, by the way, were never established. By the time of Kerr's confession, JonBenet's mother was no longer alive. She died of ovarian cancer at the age of 49. In 2008, with the help of DNA analysis, it was possible to establish that the blood found on JonBenet's underwear did not belong to any of the girl's relatives. The charges against the family were dropped, but there are still people who are sure that the parents are involved in the murder of the baby. As it turned out, the blood belongs to an unknown man. The verification of his DNA with a database of the genetic material of criminals by the FBI has not yet yielded results. In September 2016, the world remembered the high-profile murder again. For the first time, JonBenet's older brother, Burke, spoke about it. He gave an exclusive interview to the host of the popular show, Dr. Phil, where in a frank conversation he told about his own guesses about the case. 29-year-old Burke admitted that as a child it was very difficult for him to endure the hype associated with the case. Reporters were constantly on duty near their house. The public discussed his family's affairs for several years, and as a result, the guy, according to his own words, developed a persistent aversion to publicity. He closed himself and began to lead a secluded life. JonBenet's parents, at least while the girl's mother was alive, did not interfere with publicity. They not only gave numerous interviews and wrote a book, but also sued several publications that posted false information about the murder of their daughter. As a result, John and Patricia sued for $4 million from 2 American magazines. Later, after the death of his wife, John, who remarried, published another book of memoirs called The Other Side of Suffering. Why didn't we understand that a child participating in contests is so vulnerable? Why did we have parties in our house that we let strangers into? I will never forgive myself for this, John writes in his work. Less than greater than I had to rouse all my relatives and acquaintances. Attract all possible resources to find the killer. He was hiding in the dark. He's hiding somewhere right now. We don't know if JonBenet's killer will be found. Usually, such stories turn out to have a rather trivial solution, which hopefully the guards will still find. In the meantime, we invite you to participate in our survey. Do you think the girl's brother is right? And can beauty contests play a fatal role in a child's life?